The medical bay of the flagship was quieter than a cathedral and twice as judgmental. I lay back in a reclining diagnostic cradle that looked suspiciously like it had been designed by someone who hated spines. Above me, a lattice of translucent instruments unfolded like curious metallic flowers, humming softly as if warming up for a concert no one had bought tickets for. "This is routine," the doctor said. She looked almost human, almost. Smooth bronze skin, sharp cheekbones, dark hair braided back with threads of silver light. But her ears were long and elegant, curving slightly behind her head like delicate blades sculpted from porcelain. They twitched when she focused, which she did now as she adjusted the scanner. "Define routine," I muttered. She glanced at me. "Statistically uneventful." "That is not comforting." Her lips curved faintly. "For you, perhaps not." A translucent screen formed above my chest, projecting a spiraling helix in pale blue light. The ship's AI whispered data into the air in a tone that felt unnecessarily dramatic for something measuring cholesterol. "Human male," the AI intoned. "Species, Terran, subclassification, frequently anxious." "I object to that last part," I said. The doctor ignored me, long fingers moving through holographic controls. "We are required to ensure that visiting envoys carry no adaptive pathogens, nanite infestations, or unstable quantum signatures." I showered. "That is irrelevant." The scanner descended, bathing me in a gentle field of light that felt like being examined by a polite ghost. For a moment nothing happened. The helix rotated lazily. The doctor's ears remained still. Then the color shifted. Blue flickered to gold. The AI paused mid-sentence. The helix brightened, strands unraveling and reweaving themselves into a complex lattice marked with imperial sigils I recognized from palace banners. The doctor blinked once. She tapped the display, the gold intensified, she leaned closer, her ears angled forward. "That's new," I offered helpfully. "Silence," she murmured. The scanner emitted a soft chime, one that sounded far too pleased with itself. Symbols cascaded down the hologram, aligning in patterns that made the air feel heavier. The doctor reran the scan. Gold again. She recalibrated. Gold. She disconnected the AI, manual scan. Gold. "I assume gold is bad," I said. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the data as if it might apologize. "That sequence," she whispered finally. "Is it contagious?" Her gaze snapped to mine. For a second, something flickered across her expression. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. "That sequence is restricted to the sovereign genome." I blinked. "The what?" "The royal bloodline." I considered this. "You're telling me I'm allergic to peas and secretly royalty." "You are not royalty," she said sharply. "Good, I'm not great with crowns." She straightened, but her hands trembled slightly as she transmitted the data to a higher clearance channel. The chamber lighting dimmed automatically, responding to elevated protocol. "Doctor," the AI resumed cautiously, "should I notify the throne?" She hesitated, her long ears tilted backward, a gesture I had learned meant unease. "Yes." A silence followed that felt engineered. "Is this common?" I asked. "No." "Has it happened before?" "No." "Could your machine be broken?" She shot me a look. This machine once identified a shapeshifter disguised as a diplomatic casserole. That seems oddly specific. It was a stressful banquet. The door behind her parted with a hiss. Two armored sentinels entered, their armor glowing faintly with containment fields. They stopped when they saw me still lying there, very much human, very much confused. "Remain where you are," one ordered. "I wasn't planning on sprinting," I said, gesturing to the web of light surrounding me. The doctor stepped between us and the scanner. "He is not a threat." The sentinel glanced at the golden helix. "That pattern." "I am aware of the pattern." Her voice was calm, but her ears were rigid now, upright like antennae catching a storm. Moments later, the chamber's central projector ignited. A tall figure materialized in luminous projection, the Queen. She looked like the doctor, only sharper, more composed. Her long ears framed her face like regal crescents. Her eyes scanned the data before she acknowledged me. "What am I observing?" she asked. The doctor swallowed. "Your Majesty, the human's genetic profile aligns with the prime sovereign sequence." The Queen's expression did not change. Then slowly color drained from her face. "That is royal family genetics," she said quietly. I lifted my hand. "Before anyone panics, I have never tried to overthrow a galactic empire. I can barely assemble furniture." No one laughed. The golden helix rotated between us, serene and unbothered by constitutional crisis. The Queen studied me with an intensity that felt like gravity had increased around my skull. "Impossible," she murmured. "That's reassuring," I said weakly. The doctor turned to her. "The alignment is precise, not approximate, not derivative." "Trace ancestry," the Queen commanded. The AI complied, projecting branching timelines that extended centuries into the past. At the root of one luminous branch was the imperial sigil. At the other end. I stared at the glowing tree. So, hypothetically, if someone were related to alien royalty, hypothetically, what would that mean? The Queen's gaze shifted from the data back to me. "It would mean," she said carefully, "that history has been lying to us." The scanner hummed softly, as if pleased with the chaos it had created. And somewhere in the vast ship beyond the walls, alarms began to pulse. Not loud, not frantic, but steady. Deliberate. As if the Empire itself had just realized it might have misplaced a piece of its own bloodline. And that piece was currently asking whether this came with dental benefits. I was not arrested. That felt like an achievement worth celebrating. Instead, I was escorted, politely but very firmly, through corridors that seemed to lengthen on purpose. The floor beneath us shimmered with living circuitry, responding to the presence of the armored guards like a loyal pet recognizing its favorite boots. Every few meters, scanning fields brushed over me again, as if the ship still couldn't believe what it had seen and hoped I might suddenly turn into something more convenient. "This is unnecessary," the doctor said beside me. "It is protocol," one of the sentinels replied. "I am aware of protocol. I helped write part of it." "You wrote the section about biohazards." She gave him a look. "Everything is a biohazard if you are sufficiently paranoid." I appreciated her dedication. We entered a chamber so vast that my sense of scale gave up and went home. Pillars of crystalline light rose in slow spirals, each one pulsing faintly, as though the architecture itself had a heartbeat. At the far end, elevated but not distant, stood the Queen, not as a projection this time. In person, she was even more composed. Her long ears were upright, symmetrical, perfectly still, not a twitch. That somehow was more unsettling than panic. I was guided forward. No one told me to kneel. I didn't kneel. It felt like progress. "You have been analyzed again," the Queen said. "I've had more scans in 1 hour than I've had medical checkups in my entire life. This is not humor. It's coping." A faint ripple moved through the chamber as advisors whispered across neural links. I couldn't hear their words, but I felt their attention pressing in from every direction. The doctor stepped forward, projecting a lattice of data into the air between us. The golden helix unfolded again, rotating with infuriating confidence. "We have cross-referenced all Imperial archives," she said. "The prime sovereign sequence appears in his genome without corruption, not spliced, not implanted. Integrated. Integrated how?" one of the advisors demanded. "That," she replied, "is the problem." The Queen's gaze remained on me. "State your lineage." "I'm from Earth," I said. "My parents are from Earth. As far as I know, no one in my family has glowing eyes or conquered star systems." The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the central archive engaged. Above us, ancient records began to replay in strands of light, images of starships older than my species, recorded history, of expeditions sent beyond mapped space. 300 cycles ago," the Queen said slowly, "a royal expedition made contact with a developing world." "Earth," the doctor whispered. The archive shifted. A blue planet turned in holographic silence. "An initiative was proposed," the Queen continued. "An attempt to introduce adaptive resilience into our bloodline. The architects believed survival required expansion, not merely of territory, but of biology." "Wait," I said. "You experimented on humans." "On volunteers," the doctor corrected automatically. "Volunteers who did not know they were volunteering," an advisor muttered. That earned him a sharp look from the Queen. "The program was terminated," she said. "Declared unstable. The resulting genetic lines were thought to have dissipated." "Dissipated," I repeated. "That's comforting, like a weather pattern." The golden helix flickered brighter. "The sequence did not dissipate," the doctor said quietly. "It stabilized." Silence thickened. "Within his lineage," she added. I rubbed my face. "So somewhere in my family tree there's an alien royal branch." "Not a branch," the Queen said. "A root." That word hung there. The advisors began speaking over one another, voices overlapping in a rising storm. "If this becomes public, it undermines the sovereign claim." He could be weaponized. I'm standing right here, I said. The Queen raised one hand. Instantly the chamber fell silent. Her eyes never left mine. Do you seek the throne? I blinked. I struggle with public speaking. That is not an answer. I don't want your throne, I said honestly. I didn't even want this appointment. I applied for a cultural exchange grant. I thought I'd be giving lectures about Earth literature. Instead, the doctor murmured almost to herself, you carry the imperial genome. Accidentally, I said, very accidentally. The Queen descended the steps toward me. Each movement was precise, controlled. Up close, I could see the faint luminescent tracery beneath her skin, the same faint pattern I had glimpsed in the doctor when she concentrated. She studied my face as though searching for something familiar. There are markers in you, she said softly, that predate my own coronation, markers tied to the first sovereign. That sounds like paperwork I do not want. A faint, almost imperceptible twitch touched the edge of her ear. Amusement? Irritation? Hard to tell. The Empire stands on continuity, she said. If your existence becomes known, factions will interpret it as a challenge. I'm not challenging anyone, I said quickly. I don't even understand your tax system. The doctor almost smiled. An advisor stepped forward. Your Majesty, with respect, he represents a destabilizing variable. I represent a lot of variables, I said. Most of them involve confusion. The Queen turned to the advisors. He also represents truth. That quieted them. She faced me again. You will remain under observation. That sounds ominous. It is precaution. Will I at least get a window? The doctor spoke before the Queen could. He will remain in my wing, under scientific supervision. Her tone left little room for debate. The Queen considered this. Very well. The advisors stiffened but did not protest. As the chamber's energy shifted from confrontation to containment, I exhaled slowly. So, I said, glancing between them, just to clarify, I am not being executed. No, the Queen replied, imprisoned. No, crowned. A faint pause, no. Good, because I really don't have the posture for it. This time, unmistakably, the doctor's lips curved. The Queen studied me one last time, her expression unreadable. You may not desire the throne, she said, but destiny rarely consults preference. I prefer it send an email first, I muttered. The chamber lights brightened again, but the tension didn't fully dissolve. It settled instead like charged air before a storm. As I was escorted back beside the doctor, she leaned slightly closer. You are remarkably calm, she said. I am catastrophically overwhelmed. That is not what I perceive. I learned early that if you panic, things get worse. Her long ear twitched thoughtfully. You understand, she said, that your genome may alter the balance of an interstellar empire. I nodded slowly. On Earth, I said, I once accidentally broke a self-checkout machine and caused a minor supermarket evacuation. She blinked. You compare those events. Scale is relative. For the first time since the golden helix appeared, she let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like laughter. Ahead of us, doors sealed, corridors adjusted, systems recalibrated. Behind us, the Queen remained still in the vast chamber, staring at the fading projection of my ancestry spiraling through centuries. Somewhere in that spiral was a secret her empire had buried. And somehow, against all statistical probability, that secret had inherited my face. By the time the assembly was convened, I had been scanned, sequenced, debated, and politely glared at more times than I could count. The doctor informed me this was a transitional period in imperial history. I informed her that on Earth we usually handled transitions with coffee and denial. The chamber filled in layers, physically and digitally. Nobles stood in curved ranks, their long ears angled in subtle variations of suspicion. Above them, thousands of holographic presences flickered into view from distant systems. Entire star colonies watched through light. I resisted the urge to wave. The Queen stood at the center, radiant and immovable. When she spoke, her voice carried not through speakers but through the ship itself. 3 centuries ago, she began, our predecessors feared extinction. Murmurs rippled. They sought resilience beyond our stars. They initiated a genetic convergence with a young species. A projection of Earth rotated above us. I shifted my weight. That's my planet, I whispered to the doctor. I am aware. The program was declared unstable, the Queen continued. The bloodline was believed lost. The golden helix appeared once more, suspended in the air between us. My helix, our helix. It was not lost, she said. It endured. A counselor stepped forward. Your Majesty, acknowledging this human as sovereign blood invites fracture. Another added, it creates a competing claim. The chamber tightened. The Queen turned to me. Do you claim the throne? 100,000 eyes focused. 3 days ago I would have panicked, I would have deflected, joked, minimized. Now I stepped forward. No, I said clearly, I don't want your throne. The words echoed. I didn't ask for this. I didn't know about it, but I also won't pretend it isn't real. The helix shimmered brighter as if approving my honesty. I'm not here to replace anyone, I continued, and I'm not proof that your empire failed. I'm proof it adapted. A murmur different this time, not outrage, consideration. On my world, I said, we survive because we mix cultures, ideas, genes. It's messy, it's chaotic, it's also why we're still here. One of the nobles scoffed. You compare your primitive world to imperial sovereignty. I looked at him. We made pizza, that alone suggests potential. A few younger advisors choked back laughter. The Queen's ear twitched there and gone. The doctor stepped beside me, projecting additional data. His genome does not override the sovereign line, she said. It reinforces it. The ancient convergence stabilized. It did not compete. She looked at the assembly, long ears lifted with quiet conviction. Our founders believed survival required expansion, not isolation. The chamber grew still. The Queen descended the final step until she stood beside me rather than above. There will be no second coronation, she declared. There will be no erasure. She turned slowly, addressing every system watching. The imperial bloodline extends beyond our species, not as weakness, but as evolution. A pause. I remain your queen, she said, and he remains what he has always been, a bridge. The word settled into the chamber like a foundation stone. The counselors conferred rapidly through silent neural bursts. The tension that had threatened to fracture into factions began slowly to redistribute. One elder advisor spoke at last. If he is not claimant, what is his role? The Queen looked at me. 3 days ago, I would have shrugged. Now I met her gaze steadily. I'll stay, I said, not as royalty, as liaison. I inhaled slowly. Your ancestors reached for Earth out of fear. Maybe now we reach back out of choice. The doctor's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. We share history whether we like it or not, I added. We can treat that as a scandal, or we can treat it as a starting point. Silence, then, unexpectedly, one of the distant holographic delegates began to applaud. A second followed. It spread, not thunderous, not unanimous, but steady. The Queen inclined her head not to me, but with me. Then it is decided, she said. The convergence stands acknowledged, the alliance formalized. The golden helix dissolved, no longer a threat. Just data, just truth. Later, when the assembly dispersed and the chamber emptied of its electric scrutiny, I found myself back in the medical wing. The doctor stood beside the diagnostic cradle where this had all begun. You were different today, she said. Terrified, I admitted. That is not what I meant. I leaned against the console. 3 days ago, I wanted this to disappear. Now, I think maybe it's supposed to exist. Her long ear tilted thoughtfully. You have changed, she said. I've had accelerated character development. A faint smile touched her mouth. You understand, she added, that some will still question you. On Earth, they question everything. It builds stamina. She studied me for a moment longer. You no longer deflect with humor as reflex. I still use it, I said. I just don't hide behind it. The ship hummed around us, steady, vast, alive. Somewhere beyond the viewport, Earth glowed faintly in distant projection. I never thought my DNA would cause diplomatic reform, I said. You never thought you carried an empire's forgotten experiment. Fair. She stepped closer to the console, activating a new display. This time the helix glowed not gold, but a balanced spectrum, blue and gold intertwined. Adaptation, she murmured. Evolution, I replied. For the first time since stepping aboard the flagship, I didn't feel like an anomaly. I felt like possibility. The Queen's decision had not erased tension. It had redirected it toward collaboration instead of conflict. I had not gained a throne. I had gained responsibility. And as the ship adjusted its course, not toward conquest, not toward retreat, but toward exchange, I realized something simple and startling. History hadn't chosen me because I was extraordinary. It had chosen me because I was ordinary enough to connect two worlds without trying to dominate either. The empire did not need another ruler. It needed proof that its future could be shared. And for once in my life, I was not the mistake in the system. I was the update.